fascinating story happening on Wall Street. I love this one. Let's put this up there on the screen from the New York Times. He built a $10 billion investment firm. It fell apart in days. I can't pronounce this one. I think it's Archegos Capital Management. Bill Hwang is his name. So looking into Bill's investment strategy, this is absolutely fascinating. So he was sitting on $20 billion in shares of Viacom, which made him the media company's single largest shareholders. Now, as a result of his total exposure and debt packages and all of this, it fell apart literally within days, which caused the stock of Viacom, which is a real company with real real stuff like assets that actually make money, to go in half in a single week. So this prompted an entire SEC investigation. They're looking into what exactly is happening here. But I actually just think it goes to show how complete house of cards so many of these financial firms, who are supposedly the greatest geniuses in our economy, really are. What it is a complex series of layering debt and borrowing from all of the biggest titans on Wall Street, JP Morgan Chase, Goldman Sachs, all these people that give them a whole bunch of money. And then what happens is just one or two things go south, and they're leveraged so far up to their neck that they have to start selling, margin call, like all of that, and it can just evaporate. Gone. $10 billion.
And this was like a family firm. This was like a family, their assets, rich people. And what was really wild about that, there's a few layers here. So first of all, like you were saying, the kind of like house of cards domino effect of this one firm goes under due to the Viacom CBS share price dropping a little bit, margin calls, and all these big banks take massive hits. So there's that. There's the unnecessary complexity of all of this, because Viacom, they didn't even realize.
They didn't know.
They didn't know that this was their largest institutional investor by far. And so the other piece of this is, once again, it exposes kind of, okay, so you've got the overwhelming complexity here because they were holding these shares through a bunch of like complicated financial instruments. So it was not clear cut at all, which is part of why these banks got caught up in this, because they also didn't realize how much exposure there was here. And these are investment professionals who you would think would be able to untangle all this stuff, but it was so opaque that no one was able to really untangle it until it was too late. But the other piece of this is how fake it all is. Nothing significant changed at Viacom CBS.
No.
Like, it is still the same company.
Exactly.
There's no like underlying value change here. The sequence of events was they went to raise another round of financing. The people who were involved in raising that money expected Hwang to come in as one of the major players in that round of financing. He didn't come in. They closed the round of financing at less than what they expected to raise. And that triggered this whole series of people freaking trying to sell and whatever, decrease the stock price enough so that then Hwang had to start selling to make his margin calls and be able to cover. And that decreased the stock price even further so that it dropped, like you said, by 50%. That's all a little bit complex. But the bottom line is, again, nothing really changed at Viacom CBS in terms of the fundamentals of this company and their prospects, whether you think they're good or bad, and I have honestly no idea whether they're good or bad. Nothing fundamentally changed. But because you have this whole incredibly complex house of cards situation, the share price drops by half.
Yeah, and this
over nothing.
This is financialization and globalization run amok, which is that you have this guy who has a $10 billion fund, and then he borrows a bunch of money in order to buy Viacom stock, which is worth $20 billion. And now what happens is that because the stock is mostly held by borrowed money, if it goes down, then he has to pay back all of his loans. So at the exact same time that all of that is happening, a quote Chinese e-cigarette company apparently begins to lose its position, and is called RLX, and another one called GSX spiral in the Asian markets. So then he has to pull back from this deal, which basically causes the CBS Viacom thing to short on terms of the price, which causes all these margin calls to come in, and it just goes through. And again, the core point of this segment is nothing happened at Viacom. So this is a real company with real assets that generates billions of dollars in cash with real employees who hold this stock as probably mortgage the value of their home and more on the basis of it, and it just evaporates, gone. Hundreds of billions of dollars just in the matter of a second. And it just shows the fragility of our financial system, of globalization, of financialization. And it's always very useful whenever these things happen because it shows that it can all just vanish in an entire instant. And most of the richest people in the world, they operate this way. Their wealth is just as precarious. It's all built on lies and debt, and it's all fakery in terms of paper money. But the problem is that we borrow and leverage real things like factories and people's jobs and people's pensions and their homes against the values of fake assets, and it causes just huge blowups. This is the world we live in now.
It's all so fake, and you really see it clearly during a time like this when nothing fundamentally changes at Viacom CBS and there's wild shifts in the stock price. But then when it's, GameStop and Reddit, suddenly then it's like the fundamentals and how can you not respect the fundamental value of the market, et cetera, et cetera. Hwang and others like him made huge profits when the going was good, but he was so over-leveraged that when the tides turned and things started going south, it all fell apart, and there was tremendous risk throughout the entire financial system.
It's a great story, at least. It's a good story.
Very revealing story.
All right.
More Rising for you after this.